All right. Welcome everybody to What a Concept, the show where we chat about our favorite concept records. And I'm joined today by one of my good buddies here on YouTube. I think he's one of the first that I ever had on my little channel. We're talking about Matt O'Leary. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Yes, one of our first friends.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we go way back. I can't even remember what. I think it was like a deer hunter or something like that, because you were the one that got me into that. And thank you, scientists and all that. So I have you to thank for a lot of the modern stuff.
It was the golden days of
Hmm.
2015, 2016. Still one of
Hmm.
my favorite periods of music, and you're associated with that.
Ah,
So,
same, likewise.
yeah.
And sadly, we're not talking about that today. Luckily, we are talking about one of the, I think, most famous and critically acclaimed concept records. Matt, I'll give you the honor of introducing it since this was your choice.
Great. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me again. I have a channel, Matt O'Leary Music, and I feel like my channel is I'd like to think that part of the value I provide is just some left field picks, some obscurities. Doing some deep virtual crate digging, but
Yeah.
I thought, nothing could be more unexpected left field than just picking the most prog album of all prog albums,
Yeah.
maybe besides, Dark Side. When you just
Yeah.
think of concept albums, it's like this one comes to mind, and
Yeah.
that is Thick as a Brick by Jethro Tull.
Yeah.
So I picked this in part because it's, one of the giants. And I thought, in the spirit of the album, I wanted to approach it critically, like we were talking about before, and not just sort of accept the inherited wisdom of, the legendary status of this album.
Yeah.
So kind of try to understand what makes it tick. And then uh, yeah, I guess I won't bury the lead that this is my very favorite classic era
Oh,
prog album.
okay. Love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very high up there for me. I know when I was first getting like doing a deep dive into the prog sphere back in high school, like I had already devoured everything from Genesis in the 70s. And this was like one of the first steps beyond that. Like this was when I was looking at Yes, and Jethro Tull is usually the second one that pops up. Um, I even remember going on vacation with my family, and the very first CD MP3 that I burnt had this whole album on it, along with like the Division Bell from Pink Floyd and I think like Fragile from Yes. And so I have very vivid memories of being on vacation with this record.
Mm.
Um, and just like falling in love with the music and the virtuosity of it, knowing that it was a concept record, but 16-year-old me didn't quite have all the context that I now have about this record to appreciate it even more.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I'm looking forward to
yeah,
see how your thoughts have evolved because I
yeah.
actually strangely distinctly remember you talking about this album maybe 8, 9 years ago or something like that on either a ranking you did or I think you did like a passion play versus Thick as a Brick at one
I think I
point.
did. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So yeah, I'm interested to see, what else you've pulled out over time.
yeah, yeah. So I think to start off this conversation, let's talk about the album, the time period, a little bit of context, just to kind of give a ground floor, kind of foundation for the rest of this conversation. Um, I know doing a little bit of research, and I have this album in multiple copies. Like I have the record, I have the re-release of the record, I have like the original like newspaper fold out that it was originally came in.
Nice.
Um, and like so this came out in what, 1971, I believe,
Hmm.
1972. I think the music was written in 71 and the album came out in 72 or something,
Wasn't it
something like that.
71?
Uh
Maybe not.
my copyright on
Off.
my CD that I have in front of me here says 72.
Okay, and then
Um,
Passion Play must have been
I
73
think
then.
Passion Play was 73.
Okay.
Because Aqualung was 71. Um, and so at the time, concept albums were quite popular. Um, yes, I think had done a few at that point, maybe. Um, there was a lot of like one side tracks. And so after doing a bunch of reading and a lot of research, a lot of people were attributing Aqualung, the album that came out prior to this for Jethro Tull, as being like, their first big concept record. And Ian Anderson was like, that wasn't a concept record. It was just a bunch of songs that I had written that just happened to have a similar theme. Um, there were characters on that album that showed up in different songs, but like it wasn't a concept record. So he wrote Thick as a Brick as like a parody or a satire of the concept record. Um,
Right.
and in my mind, this record kind of has three concepts to it. You have the kind of like different, like, what is it, like Russian nesting dolls of concepts. You've got, the framing work of, or I guess, coming into the studio making a parody. Then you have the framing work, which is this kid that is disqualified from a poetry writing contest for his poem of
Yeah.
whatever it was.
The cover's
Uh,
so hilarious. Like we just
Oh,
need to
it's
give some
great.
props
Yeah,
to
if
that
anybody here,
photo.
I'll show it with the, let's see here. There you go. There's the CD I have there. Um, and then you have like the actual lyrics that are found within it that tell this tale. Um, so yeah, that's kind of like
Right.
the big framing device.
Yeah, it's good that you brought up the time period and that
hmm
we're in the heart of Prague
Yeah.
when that was just in its peak. And yeah, to not just play on that after the fact, but they did it
Mhm.
in the midst of it. That it wasn't like a commentary looking back on that period as, oh, that was kind of, silly or whatever, the excess of the
Yeah.
of progressive rock albums, but to do it like in the moment is pretty
hmm
cool to
hmm
me. To have that level of awareness
Yeah.
of the kind of cultural space and to be able to comment on it and to step outside of it
hmm
while you're in it. And you're clearly very good at that style of over
Yeah.
the top progressive rock concept,
Yeah.
playing and writing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was doing a little bit more research leading up to this and how they were practically writing this album as they were recording it. So like there's like this big organic aspect of it, like things are being done in the studio as they're happening, rather than having this idea, this big concept kind of come down to you and then just getting it out. This is kind of like an organic discovery as they're writing it, which I always thought
Yeah.
musically was very interesting.
Yeah, I saw that too, that Ian Anderson was waking up early to
hmm
write sections of music. He'd say like 3 minutes at a time
Yeah.
and then bring that to the band. But even doing that, it was very collaborative, I heard, in the studio,
Yeah.
and they had a lot of fun recording. And I think you can hear that in the music that everyone is contributing and seems to
hmm
be, excited and equally valued in the
Yeah.
compositions and the arrangements.
Yeah. One of the things that I love about it time-wise was like to record and write this record, it took them like 2 to 3 weeks. And then the actual newspaper fold out took them like 5 to 6 weeks. So like the actual like album cover took twice as long to do than the actual music itself,
Yeah.
which I thought
I
was
don't
hilarious.
have the newspaper, but isn't it like a 12 pager? And they
Yeah.
wrote stories and
Yeah.
articles.
Here I've got, so unfortunately I gave my copy of the original back to my dad because I've got the repressing of it, but it comes with like the book that does its best to reproduce it. It's not the same because it's not in the actual, that's it's not in the actual newspaper folding. It's more in a book, but like
Mhm.
all the articles are here. Um, my favorite, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's like a paint by, not a paint by numbers, but like a connect the dots game. See if I can find it if it's in here. Maybe they removed it. Essentially, it's just like a lady. It's supposed to be like a naked lady. Where is
I
it?
think it says a lot about music at the time that that was top of the charts, that that
Yeah,
was not only acceptable, but
there it is. Yeah, there's a
captured the
little.
attention and interest of a lot of people.
Yeah, so they did like a full on
That's great.
newspaper, like the
Yeah.
weekend television. You've got like the games.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, it's like they had to sit down and write all of these. Um, so
Which must have been just an absolute blast. While there
yeah,
were, with all the pressures and the quick timing of everything in those
yeah,
times too of touring, I know that they did it in full, right? When they did
yes,
a tour, and then they even mixed in little vignettes and little
Little
comedic
monologues and whatnot.
moments
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah, I think like I know Ian Anderson approached this as like a as I mentioned, like a satire or a parody, kind of like a airplane to airport, or I think for more modern millennials, it would be like a scary movie to a scream kind of an aspect, um, in both presentation and in concept. Um, because as we were mentioning, like this was maybe not directly, but they were definitely poking fun at the whole concept record and progressive rock overall throughout the music, and kind of in so doing, kind of made one of the best ones at the time, which I
Yeah,
think
it's
is,
funny how that works out. I've heard that from
yeah.
other artists as well, that sometimes when you're knowing, when you're doing something knowingly and commenting almost on your own uh, shtick,
Hmm.
that sometimes that can be your best work.
Yeah.
You're kind of leaning into the things that like you think uh, other people think of you,
Yeah.
and even doing a little bit of parody like they are here, and then that ends up really working. So that strange balance of like this is really serious music, but also not
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
funny.
I keep hearing like that this is very like Monty Python and like Douglas Adams, like very English, very like British humor kind of an idea.
Hmm.
And now that I'm older and I know the lyrics a little bit better and I know more of the layers of the concept, it's like, yeah, a lot of it's very tongue in cheek, a lot of it's very silly. But if you don't know that, much like a very good satire, you might just think that no, this is just a really great progressive rock concept record, and it is. It definitely is. But like that little extra layer to it just adds a little bit of that spice. That's like, oh, I see what they're doing here. You know?
Right. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think Ian Anderson even said like maybe 50% of people don't get the joke,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is, interesting. The name of the album's Thick as a Brick. It kind
Yeah.
of is a comment on that.
It's kind of like right there in front of you, you know? Yeah. Um, so yeah, I also love that this is one of their more popular records. Like I feel like this one and Aqualung, I think are like their two big ones. And then, they went on to do quite a bit of great stuff afterwards. But it's I always feel like people point to this one and Aqualung as kind of their being their best. Um,
It seems to be
so
Aqualung being
yeah,
the classic rock radio
yeah,
staple album that's maybe a bit more accessible.
yeah,
And then there's this.
yeah.
There are a couple albums that are really great that get are kind of unsung.
Hmm.
Mention Passion Play.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, these two seem to be the ones.
Yeah, I do find it funny because I feel like Passion Play is both more tongue in cheek, but also more serious. Like this was them trying to actually do a concept record like fully, without poking fun at the concept record itself, but adding more humor into the story and into the concept of it. So we're not going to talk too much about Passion Play, but I do love Passion Play. This is about thick as a brick. Um, so yeah, let's I know we've kind of danced around and talked about one of the main concepts of this record. Was there anything on your end that you feel is like kind of like the big concept of this record?
Yeah, I think more than sort of that narrative idea of the little boy, there's definitely like an array of pretty wide-reaching themes,
Mhm.
and I think it's fairly ambiguous the way that a lot of them are handled, where it's open to interpretation.
Yeah.
Which I love in music. I think one of the big streams throughout this is very similar to the spirit of that age in
Hmm.
progressive rock, which is individualism, not really accepting inherited traditions, forging your own path,
Yeah.
coming to your own conclusions. And
Hmm.
then there's also this idea of, coming of age, disillusionment with society, and becoming cynical and jaded in your older age. And it can go a lot deeper than that. And there's tons of other little avenues and comments on different philosophical ideas throughout the
Yeah.
entire thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like this is a little bit of a double-edged sword because I almost feel like looking too deep into this record is antithetical to what this album is trying to do. It's like Well, it's just a silly concept record that we decided to poke fun at concept records. So anything in here that you find as being deeper is kind of the point. It's like, yeah, we just threw a bunch of these ideas on the wall to see what stuck. And if I want to put my head up my own ass for a second and just say, well,
Yeah,
this whole concept record is all about struggle between in groups. You have the children struggling with the parents, and the power dynamics of parents and children are found on here. And how does one inherent kind of the head of the family within the family dynamics of the British society at the time? But then there's also the struggle between the artist and the soldier and what their place in society is found on here. What does it mean to be a soldier and taking orders, but at the same time, what does it mean to be an artist when your art isn't being appreciated? It's like all those are here, but does it actually matter on an album that's just kind of poking fun at all those concepts that have been played with on other albums?
yeah,
Yeah,
and yeah, it is kind of a Rorschach in that
yeah,
way,
yeah,
because I've seen countless
yeah,
themes being discussed with this album,
yeah, yeah. And a
and
lot of them are almost like, what's the word? When they're like opposite to one another.
yeah, contradictory or whatever.
Contradictory,
Yeah,
thank you. It's like one person I saw that was saying, oh, this was about class struggles and how it's the working class struggling with the upper class. But then I saw others that was all about, no, this is how there's that synergy between the upper class and the lower class and how they work together and how they profit from one another. And I'm like,
sure.
well,
There's kind of that projection of your own, yeah,
yeah,
ideas
yeah.
onto it.
Yeah, and I think bringing this back to what you were saying as the title of this album is Thick as a Brick. I think the overall thing is like putting too much meaning to just an ink blot. It's like sometimes a lamp is just a lamp, and it's very Monty Python in that sense. It's very I always lean on Douglas Adams. It's very Douglas Adams of like the bigger like the question is more important than the answer. So it's like, yeah, we're just putting this on the wall and seeing what sticks. So
Hmm. I feel
yeah,
like it's always written in that way.
yeah.
Um, yeah, the narrative is loose enough that it
Hmm.
does lend itself to a very subjective, personal
Yeah.
interpretation. And yeah,
Yeah.
it could be laughable to try to like pin it down too much to, yeah.
Yeah. I think the whole framing of this, of the lyrics being written by what, like an 8-year-old or something like that. It's like, oh, but he was a prodigy. It's like, sure, but like in the liner notes, or not in the liner notes, but in the actual newspaper article, it's like, well, when I was his age, I didn't even know what a gutter was. So how could we put a sperms in the gutter when we didn't even know what that was?
Not to
Oh.
mention the other thing that you didn't know about when you were 8
Hmm.
years old.
Right, right. Like that's the silliness. It's like, how did he know what a gutter is? Yeah, well, what about that other thing that he just mentioned, right? Oh my gosh. Um, so yeah, let's talk a little bit now that we've kind of, dove a little bit more into the concept, the music that's found on this, because in my mind, I don't think, and I'm trying to put my fanboy brain, a little bit onto the back seat and look at it more objectively. Um, but I think this is one of the best musical presentations that Jethro Tull and Ian Anderson has done. Like I can't, there are moments here and there on some of his other albums. But as a whole, from start to finish, I think this is one of the most strongest, most cohesive, um, and most dynamic in terms of the musicality on this record.
Yeah, I totally agree. You touched on dynamic, which is
Hmm.
kind of one of my main points around the music is just this loud, soft
Hmm.
type of thing, and just you get sections with the full orchestra playing, if you will. And every piece has some intricate part, and then you get like spotlights on individual pieces and quick back and forths between those things. There's
Hmm.
moments of just organ, and it's very, eerie almost, and then full blasting blues kind of jammy moments where everything's
Hmm.
wailing and
Hmm.
humming together. And you know, wanted to mention about the music. There's a comedic aspect I feel like in the playing as
Yeah.
well. I think of like some of the drum fills.
Hmm.
There's one in particular. It's like pretty early on. I think it's in that poet section,
Yeah.
kind of the second movement or chapter, uh, where it just sounds like he sort of dropped some objects on the tops.
Yeah, which I
It's
think
like,
this was his first record because I mean Jethro Tull, like Yes and King Crimson had a revolving door of musicians, and I think this was the first record with this drummer. So, coming in
yeah,
and just
it's Barry Barlow, right?
I think it's Barry Barlow, yeah.
On this one,
Um,
and it was Clive Bunker
that's
before.
the one. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like his drumming style on here was fantastic. Like I'm thinking of that moment in the first part, but even like on the second side, like that first 5 minute stretch where there's a little bit of like that drum solo. Um, that is one moment that always irked me because the moment that they reach my favorite moment in the album, where it, builds up into this big crescendo, they like kind of let it like fall onto the ground. And I'm like, guys, you are crafting one of the greatest moments in music history, and you're just like laying it flutter out onto this, oh, flubby dub, oh, flubby, oh, we made something really cool, but we don't want to continue it. Let's just go back to the original theme at the very
And it's
beginning.
just like,
Yeah. The guy's just like, please, I'm trying to keep up. Ah.
yeah,
So, oh boy.
yeah. Some of the drumming is pretty funny, and all the music, all the instruments have their moments like that, and
Hmm.
it's so kind of plays with you because it's so back and forth from like, yeah, a really serious, epic, emotional
Yeah.
high, and then just like something to kind of step on the rubber chicken,
Yeah.
all of a
Yeah,
sudden.
it's the the Bunny Hill, theme that everybody's being chased by like a guy in a gorilla suit and then they slip on a banana peel. It's like, okay, yeah, sure. We're reading, some really intense British literature and then oh, fart noise.
Yeah, I think of like that guitar solo
Yeah.
towards the beginning when it's really ramping up and you just go wow, 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 and there's like
Yeah.
multiple layers of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just like, okay, all right, okay.
Okay. We get it. We get it. Oh boy. Um
But it is effective emotionally to suddenly cut
mhm.
out and then it's acoustic guitar again.
Yeah.
Another aspect of the music is just being able to seamlessly transition from section to section, doing so using very unconventional chord structures,
Yeah.
major to minor moments that really it just carries so much emotion and you can't just when you think you've pinned it down with being oh this is the bluesy part then they give you something crazy that is truly progressive in just a
Mhm.
chordal sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I like this is a one of those few masterpieces where there really isn't a low point, like in terms of the music, in terms of the lyrics. And everything blends together perfectly. Like you would think with a track that's what, over 43, 44 minutes worth of music, that there would be moments of dragging or it dipping, but this is one of those few ones where it's like, no, this entire single track is brilliant from start to finish. So yeah.
Yeah, you feel that way about the end too and the
Yeah, it's kind of earned, it's come full circle in that sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like even at the 11th hour there's still so many things that like are
Hmm.
keeping it fresh every moment. uh yeah, I'm just like intrigued. Oh, what's around that corner? What's around that
Yeah.
corner? Um and yeah, into the last bit. And it really works that it's not just a stitch together
Hmm.
of songs in that way. There's so many melodic themes too. Some classical pieces they sort of work their way up into a big crescendo, and maybe you have
Hmm.
like one important theme, and it could be a long piece. But this one has multiple that come back and forth and bring you
Yeah.
in and out, and then they're like posing those different themes, and um, that aspect of it is just genius to me. I don't understand how it was written in the morning before band practice, like,
Yeah, and
just
like
doesn't connect.
that's one of the things that I love about this one that I think artists started doing within their big epics after this was we've had tracks like, say, Supper's Ready or Echoes that have the theme at the very beginning and then this big long interlude of Journey and whatnot, and then the theme at the very end. This
Mhm.
is one where those, three or four themes come in and out and play around again. Um, Part of it is just the length of the track allowing for that, but I think also Um, that idea of let's play with a theme, let's really see what we can do. Is it just filling space? It might be because we want to make a 45-minute track, but I feel like having that here, you have, bands like Yes doing the Revealing Science of God, which has that same kind of quality to it, where we've got two or three themes that pop up throughout this track throughout. So, um, yeah, uh, pivoting slightly before we get into the negatives, because that's going to be a very, very quick discussion. Did you ever get a chance to listen to Thick as a Brick Part 2?
I actually haven't.
Yeah.
I'm not a completist with a lot of these classic prog bands. So
Hmm.
I've missed, I was talking to you once about King Crimson and how there was like
Hmm.
a section in the 90s there that I just never listened
Right.
to. So
Yeah.
similarly with Jethro Tull, I haven't heard many of the new albums from Ian.
You're
I think Zealot's Gene I tuned into, but no, I didn't hear part two.
Yeah.
And so I
So
was really
I
curious about that, if it carried forth the
Yeah.
same
I
idea.
mean, yeah, so I have the CD here and it's made more like a web page rather than
Oh
a
man.
newspaper. And it actually comes with, because I got the two disc, the DVD works in the CD-ROM and it actually creates a web page for you to interact with. Um, the whole concept is what happened to the kid. And it has like different ideas of what happened to him, and like it never really lands on a cohesive story. It's just like, oh, in this life maybe he was a construction worker, in this life maybe he was an office worker, in this life maybe he had a husband, in this life maybe he had a wife but no kids, and it's a little bit of a mess. And not in the fun way that I think Thick as a Brick is. um I honestly think the album that he did, because this was like Ian Anderson. This is a weird naming convention because it's Jethro Tull's Ian Anderson's Thick
Mm.
as a Brick 2, rather than just like his other one, which was Homo Erectus, which I think is a superior record. I think the original idea was that Gerard, I think was the name. Yeah, whatever happened to Gerald Bostock? Um, he had written another album, which was going to be this one, as like the big mythos. Um, and I think they should have kept to that because this is a superior record. I would listen to this one. This one's a very, very good record.
It's funny don't they have an album called like .com or something from the
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. In like 2000 or 2001. Yeah,
so that web
JethroTull.com.
page looks like a
It
2001.
does. When did this friggin' thing come out? This came out in 2012. So like
Yeah.
well after the whole like they should know better than this by now. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Um
Is it musically interesting? I mean, I'm sure
musically
you can never live up,
you
especially,
can't. You
40
can't.
years
And
after the fact.
I mean, musically, it's fine, I will say. And I could tell that they had a lot of fun, like they did with the original Thick as a Brick. It's a little bit of a pale comparison. I find whenever bands do like a part two of their records, they can never really live up. I've only really heard like two or three records that like the part two is just as good, if not better. This one's fine. It's fine. You're not
Yeah.
missing much by not listening to it, is what I'll say. Um, but I would recommend
Yeah.
checking out Homo Erectus. I think Homo Erectus is very,
Okay.
very good. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I did like Zealot's Gene and it had its moments and then I
Yeah.
sort of fell off and on the one after that and now there's another one, right?
I know. They're pumping them
Um
out like they did in the
can't keep
70s.
up. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's talk about the few negatives of this album, if there are any. Do you have
for
any
sure.
negatives about this record?
It's tough because I don't really want to give any airtime to the negatives
Hmm. Hmm.
because it really, we our little group of modern prog acolytes
Yeah.
following modern prog and championing it and telling people that there's a lot of great modern music. This is one of those that makes me feel like they don't make them like they used to. Like there's something special about that period
Yeah.
that yeah, anything in the last 20 years, I'll just go ahead and say it, to me pales in comparison when you just talk about progressive rock.
Yeah.
I listen back to this and the level of composition, the level of balance between the musicians, um, every aspect of it, arrangement, composition, dynamics that I mentioned, is just far superior. So, with that big thing, maybe a negative that I could see people saying is something that you said. They take this moment of ecstasy and then they subvert it all of a
Yeah.
sudden.
Yeah.
And that could be frustrating. I could see for someone like a band like Yes,
Yeah.
more in that style, a little bit more self-serious.
Hmm.
They never sell themselves short on a big, incredible resolution
Yeah.
musically. So there could be that, but I think the counter to that is just this is very much in the spirit of this band and
Yeah.
Ian as a writer, and I think is true to himself in this way of having a humorous aspect. And um, I think if they tried to do an actual Yes thing and there wasn't that element,
Yeah.
it probably wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, and other than that, I don't know what comes to mind for you.
Honestly, this is one of the tough ones for me because most of the time I can think of, they're taking themselves too seriously or it's overblown or, it's over the top or something along those lines. The brilliance of this record is because they aren't taking themselves too seriously, and a lot of it is very tongue in cheek. It allows you to just enjoy the music for what it is without being bogged down with social commentary or with, the very big psychological aspects of some of these bigger concept records. And you know, much to your point, in those moments that, are building towards a fart joke or like the musical equivalent of a fart joke, I can see where they're going with that, and I really appreciate that. When I was younger, it used to frustrate me, but now because I'm more in on the joke, I can appreciate it and be like, well, I wouldn't want it any other way. I wouldn't want that big crescendo because at that point you're kind of blurring the lines between satire and parody. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, yeah, because like there is this authenticity and there is this, um, creating while discovering that, yeah, I can't really think of any true criticisms or flaws of this record. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. The only one that I'll have
Yeah,
isn't even with the music itself. It's that all these reproductions of it doesn't come with the fold out newspaper. Like my
sure.
CD
Yeah, yeah.
is like if I open up this CD and I bring out like that little liner note page, if I can ever get it out of this thing, it's like a very, it there's something, oh, I have this
What
the
about the
receipt of
Steven
this.
Wilson newer edition? Does that have the newspaper print
I think it depends
style?
on the edition that you get because I think this is the Steven Wilson one that I have here. Look, that's
I
fine.
feel like I have a really crummy repress from some point that doesn't have any bells or whistles.
Yeah,
I'd have
because
to
my
check it out.
record itself, I mean, it has the whole book. I wonder if it even
That
says that
that
it's
is the 20. When did he do that?
uh let's see, where's the copyright page? Give me the copyright page. So sure. Doesn't say. But it does have like a lot of the extra stuff in it. So like interviews and articles about it. I think this is the Steven Wilson reproduction, like the remixing and the remastering. Oh, here we go. 2012, 2015.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 2015 is the last copyright notice on this. So maybe it's just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that version on streaming and was impressed, but I'd love to
Yeah,
own
I
it.
mean, Steven Wilson reproducing a lot of these records, he does a fantastic job of, like I always say, kind of giving it a wash. He just kind of scrubs and
Yeah.
gets all the dirt and grime out of it. Um,
Yeah, and
yeah,
like I mentioned, there are moments where uh, even the keyboard player John Evans
yeah.
has some brilliant parts. He's not really mentioned typically when it comes to the band. So usually Martin
Hmm.
Barr and Ian Anderson who get the praise. But they're
Yeah.
all like equally contributing, and I can see from a mixing perspective that being difficult at times because there's you have to make each part shine when they're all shining.
Yeah. That's really
Uh,
difficult to do too.
yeah, so I can't really imagine, but to hear it with good headphones, good stereo setup, um, you can hear kind of the painstaking effort in that regard, and like how they take the voice and like he'll put it on both sides or it's doubled, but then like suddenly it's centered, and then
Yeah.
there's just a
One
lot
of,
of nuance to it.
one of these days, I want to find like a proper 5.1 surround sound setup and play some of these records in those because I've never lived in a place that had that setup,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, put
me
in the
neither.
DVD or the Blu-ray and now even the 4K and just see how much fuller that sound is.
Yeah, someone in
Um,
the comments can tell us all
can talk
about it,
about
I'm
it.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't really have too many criticisms of this album. Every time I go back to it, I'm just like refreshed by
mhm.
and reminded of how much
Yeah.
I love it. And it
Yeah.
is one that just captures you immediately. I think they really did it does so much for that first minute of music to be so strong and
Mhm.
so just immediately captivating. Um,
Yeah.
it's like it just sucks you in right away. And once you're there, you can't, you're stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, I fully agree. Let's move on to the final piece of this,
Sounds
the
good.
5 questions, the Platinum Concept Album Test. We've got 5 questions that I run all these albums through, and it's a simple yes, no, pass or fail. Um, if it gets none of these, it's a trash record, as I like to say. 1 out of 5 is tin, 2 out of 5 is bronze, 3 out of 5 is silver, 4 out of 5 is gold. And if it gets all five, 5 out of 5 is platinum. And this is the first time that I think we actually might have a record running for the platinum. I don't want to. I don't want to give anything away. I don't want to, what is it? Influence the results, but I have a pretty good feeling. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah.
Um, as guest, you have the final say of whether it passes or fails. But it's also a collaborative thing. We can try to sway one another. So,
Okay.
the first question that I
Hit
run
me.
through is this concept original?
Ah, you know, you hit on something immediately that I think I just think of like 2112,
Yeah.
the aspects I mentioned of the kind of individualism and free thinking,
Hmm.
um, criticism of established structures, and
Yeah.
I think some of those things are widespread, especially in Prague, and at that time too, late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
So in that respect, I think it's reflective of kind of the age.
Yeah.
But the very, I mean, just the how clever the newspaper concept is, the
Hmm.
painstaking effort that took, the the whole setup, farcical setup there is so good
Hmm.
that I think that's pretty original.
And that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. I think the the because we've got like 3 concepts that we're playing with.
Right. Yeah.
The the concept on the record as it's being presented itself isn't all that original. But because it's a parody or a satire, it's not
Mhm.
supposed to be original. Like it's just supposed to be a driven up, what are people thinking is deep and intellectual, and presenting it
Yeah, when
in
you
a
emphasize that aspect of the concept,
that is
it's
original. And I don't think
yeah.
anybody has done that really before or since. The closest that I think gets to it is like Devin Townsend writing a concept album about a alien that wants to blow up the world because they gave him a bad cup of coffee, right? Like I think that's the only thing that comes close to this type of a concept. So
I'm
I'm
trying to think of
okay.
modern equivalents, but
Yeah.
definitely at the time, I mean, just for being like the first to that kind of idea, there's got to be something from like Zappa, whose
Yeah.
catalog I'm not super familiar with, or other artists who have that sense of intelligence and
Yeah.
wit, who maybe
Yeah.
did something similar. I'd love to hear from others.
Yeah.
What are we
Yeah. I
missing here?
I would think like Zappa. has created albums that definitely do that, but I don't think he would approach them as concept records. I think he would just say, "Nah, this was just a reflection of mine." Um, so, but yeah, I would love to hear if
Sure.
anybody else has done this kind of a concept record before. So this is where people get in the comments. Please get in the comments and let us know.
So
Um,
I'm convinced it's very
all right.
original.
So one for one so far. We've got a pass on is it original?
Yeah,
The second question, does the music reinforce the themes of this concept?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a big pass.
Yeah.
It's very reflective of the the play on progressive rock.
hmm Yeah, and also reinforcing the idea that this is all just kind of a joke with all those moments of frustration as we as a listener have, where they're building up to this grand crescendo and then they just kind of let it fall apart. Um,
Mhm.
but also presenting with extremely brilliant and beautiful actual progressive rock music. So I would
Yes.
also give this one a pass
I
because,
I
yeah.
would add to that, the thing you've mentioned a couple times about, building up the moment and then subverting it
hmm
is reflective, I think, of like one of the deeper themes of the album of like, okay, the outsiders, the young generation becomes um, critical and then builds their own thing,
hmm
and there ends up you being a repetition of
hmm
uh, the same phenomenon
Yeah.
of this in-group and this built-up structure of knowledge and wisdom that is
Yeah.
equally fallible.
Yeah.
And so then it comes toppling down
Yeah.
when it's built up.
Yeah, and even that's reflected in the call and answer line of what is it? The artist lifts his pen as the soldier sheaths his sword, but then it gets reprised later on with the soldier lifts his pen as the artist unsheaths his sword. So, you have that cyclical
Hmm.
aspect of, the two groups kind of battling it out or being contrast towards one another. Um, and musically, it's the same theme in both ways. So, yeah, I would give this one a pretty easy pass.
Yep.
Amazing. That's two for two.
Thumbs
So we've
up.
moved it into the bronze era. Um, question three, and I think this is where a lot of our concept records thus far have tripped over, and I think we can get a little bit into the weeds on this one. Number three is this accessible to a casual listener? Can somebody off the street sit down and listen to it?
And that's a positive, you think, for
It is a positive thing, yes, if it is accessible because and I've mentioned this before, maybe I'll do a full video about it. Um, when you're able to take some of these very complex, very ethereal, very artsy ideas and present it in a way that's digestible to the masses, that's brilliance in my mind. You know,
sure something that's as maybe pretentious or just, overblown, high-minded as a concept album, if
yeah,
you're able
like
to make that accessible.
the example that I always give is an Animals from Pink Floyd versus a Wall from Pink Floyd. Why was it that the Wall sold millions and millions and millions of copies, even though we're dealing with some really dark, very heavy-handed concepts, and it's twice the length, if not more than that, of Animals, which does the same, but not a lot of people off the street have listened to it.
Right.
Um,
And you could say that Animals is you can make the argument that it's all the better because of its lack of accessibility. So I can see how this could be controversial, but I get
yes.
where you're going.
hmm hmm
Yep. So I think some of the folk aspects of the music give it some accessibility.
hmm
It's those parts aren't quite as brittle, and maybe they're a little more warm and welcoming. So
Yeah.
just in the tonal quality of the flute and the acoustic guitar, that makes it a little more accessible. I think the presence of a strong lead person singing, delivering the message is expected from
hmm
people. That's the idea of pop is to have
Yep.
that solo voice who's delivering so, that makes it accessible as opposed to something where there's like it's unclear who's the leader here, who's the
hmm
the
hmm
deliverer. And I think there are aspects of the music that are really complex and difficult and challenging. So, I don't think everyone's gonna be into this. It's kind of somewhere in between. I don't know.
Yeah. The only reason why I think like this gets the upper hand because this is a litmus test that I always put my friends through to see if it is accessible. And I've played this for a number of my friends that really don't like progressive rock. Um, and they will sit down and listen to this record. If I don't tell them that it's a single track on two sides of an album and just say, no, you should just listen to this record, and they don't clock the fact that it's just one song, they genuinely enjoy it. Um,
Yeah,
for me, I think the only barrier that this album would have to the public overall is that it's essentially a single track. Um,
right.
but if you go in not knowing that and just sit down and listen to this piece of music, I think this is very accessible because it does have, pop aspects. Sure, you have guitar solos, you have flute solos, you have keyboard solos, but it never gets wankery, like it never gets self-indulgent, it never gets overly complex or overly
I think it may, but the knowing aspect of it,
mhm.
and if you sort of let people into that, the comedy of it, that could
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
to kind of see those. Because I mean, it's not going to be a yes or no thing. I don't think is there's people who are
Yeah.
going to find this really dorky and silly and
Yeah.
ridiculous. And uh, I was just playing it a couple days ago,
Yeah.
and my wife enjoys aspects of this a lot.
Yeah.
But there are parts that are so chaotic and complicated musically that in the chaos of like having young children right now is just
Sure.
not vibing.
Right, 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 right,
So
right.
like, it's very individual to individual, where
Right.
she was like, turn this off right now, please.
Yeah, I mean, we're not
So
dealing with
yeah,
like Mars Volta or Swans or anything like that, but there are definitely
yeah.
moments where it's just like, oh boy. Um, yeah, this is a tough one then, because now I went into this being like, oh, this is one of the few things that will pass this with flying colors, but
I do think, I mean, if we're just thinking relatively about progressive rock albums, it would
yeah,
be on the more accessible side.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So
So
it's fair.
okay,
The scales are tilted
we're tilting.
to
Yeah, yeah,
pass.
yeah.
Yeah,
We're meeting somewhere in the middle, but I'm okay giving this a pass if you're okay with giving this a pass.
for sure.
All right, that's three for
Partially
three then.
because platinum is calling. So we got,
Platinum is calling. That's right. All right. Um, I think it'll pass these next two pretty easily. The fourth one is the music solid from start to finish? Is there any dips in qualities or any duds within the track lengths? I'll amend that a little bit to be tracks, any dips in quality within the runtime because there's just the one track.
no.
Yeah, this one's an easy pass for me.
Yep.
It's yeah, from start to finish. There's nothing that I wouldn't change. Sorry, there's nothing that I would change
Yeah,
about this. Um,
I agree. I can't think of a moment where I'm like, what's the next part?
yeah, yeah, and it's
Skip.
interesting. Like there are moments on the next album of Passion Play that I like more, but I think Passion Play does suffer from having some moments on there that I'm like, ugh, I don't know, guys.
Well, I mean the spectacles bit
Oh, come on, the
for
spectacles is
most
the best
people.
part. Everybody knows that the spectacles and the owl is the best part. Um,
Right. Okay.
it's something. Oh boy. Let's final question. Let's see if we can move this right to a platinum. Um, is the album the perfect length? Is it too long or too short?
I mean that's the easiest one for me. It's
Yeah.
perfect length. I mean this has been proven through uh empirical means that
Yeah.
40 minutes is like your attention span
Yeah.
of the modern man. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it really it's like 43 minutes or something
Something like
like
that.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to double check because I've got it here on my computer. Um, but yeah, I think it's the perfect length for the music that they're going for. They filled up a record side, so no, that
Yeah.
one's got a couple bonus tracks, and I don't want that. I want, let's see, the actual runtime of this beast is hold for applause. 43 minutes and 38 seconds.
It's
So
gonna be like 70 minutes. No.
70 minutes. Oh man, missed it by that much.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I think it's the perfect length. I can't imagine it being any longer, and I also can't imagine it being any shorter. I think it's the perfect length.
right. I think they hit that sweet spot. And I'm curious if they had the total length in mind. I'm guessing not. But I mean, it's vinyl, so
Yeah.
I'm sure they had that in mind. That experience was pretty critical with,
Yeah.
keeping it going. And for one side to end, like the next side starts, is
Yeah.
smart. If I recall, it's like the section that you stop is pretty much identical to the
Yeah.
section you hear
Because
first on the
it
new one.
starts and stops on that kind of echoey moment within the synth where it's just like dun 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 dun, and that's where carries
Yeah.
over. So yeah,
Yes.
perfect place.
Isn't that isn't that part very Rush-like? What song am I
It
thinking
is.
of? It
It
just
sounds like
bum
natural
bum.
science has
Natural
that
Science a little bit, but then there's an even more popular song that
that like dun dun dun. Huh. Oh, that's gonna
I
bug me
think
now.
Getty said that this is one of his favorites.
I can see that. I can see
Um,
that.
mhm.
Yeah. Just even within the production side of things, like I love that whole like dun 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 bum bum dun 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 bum bum bum. Yeah, love the production side of things. I'm sure that inspired a lot of
Yes.
modern,
Yeah.
producers on different records. So, yeah, I think if my numbers are
We've reached the
correct, I think
top.
yeah,
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5. That's the first one to reach the platinum record, all 5 questions. And that brings us to the end. So thanks,
Yeah.
Matt, for coming on and talking about Thick as a Brick.
Of course, this was a blast. I don't revisit kind of classic era albums too often, so I relish the chance to go back and listen to this, especially like I was listening to a lot of Panda Bear recently in Animal
Okay.
Collective,
Yeah.
because I'm getting ready for that new album that just came out.
Yeah.
Really love him. Great melodies, but the music is very flat dynamically. So
Mm.
I put this on and it was just like a glass of water,
Oh man.
compared to it.
Yeah.
So it was a ton of fun.
I love that. I love that. And thank you, viewers, for coming in and joining us today. Matt, do you want to leave the viewers with anything? I'll leave your channel down below so people can check you out if they haven't already. Um, but yeah, anything you want to leave the listener with?
I don't think so. Just yeah, looking forward to some more collabs this year, hopefully. And
Absolutely.
uh yeah,
Uh,
nothing else. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you all. And thanks once again for tuning in. I haven't figured out a sign off yet, so we'll just say for now, Matt and Notes, we are out.